Hey everybody, and welcome to my top 10 deduction games. Now, I really enjoy deduction games. It's probably up there with my favourite kind of genre of games. I just really enjoy working things out and using logic to determine the answer. There's a lot of good ones out there. These are ones that I personally enjoy. Some are more complex than others. Some are kind of pure deduction. Some are more kind of story driven. But let's get started at number 10. At number 10, I have a pretty unknown game with Divinare. Now this is fairly light, but it's pretty interesting and it has gorgeous production and gorgeous artwork. Basically, a certain number of cards are going to be divided amongst all the players involved, and all those cards, obviously there's different kind of types of cards, and they all relate to a different, almost like a board on the table, and you're going to try and use your information you have with the certain types of cards you have to guess how many cards of a certain type are amongst all the players. And you do that by playing a card down to the table and moving your counter on the relevant board to try and determine exactly how many type of cards of that type are there. And obviously the closer you are by the end of the round, the more points you get, and the further away you are, you can potentially lose points. But the cool thing is that every so often you're going to swap your hand with the player to your left or right. And obviously that's going to give you more and more information, because obviously as they're playing cards and moving their token as well, you're getting more information there also. So yeah, there's always kind of new information coming into the fray. You're never going to have the probably exact amount, but it's always fun to kind of guess. And when you do get it right, it is quite rewarding. But yeah, for a nice light one, this is definitely one to check out. And as I said, gorgeous production, gorgeous artwork, nice big kind of tarot cards, and it's just enjoyable. So that's number 10, Divinare. At number 9, I have 13 Clues. Now, 13 Clues is pretty much your what you'd expect with a deduction game, that Cluedo-esque kind of feel, where you're trying to work out kind of the murderer, the weapon, and I think it's the location as well. But the cool thing about this one is that you kind of know everybody else's answer apart from your own, because the answer that you have is facing away from you and you're the only one who can't see it. And then you're going to basically tick off everybody else's kind of what they have in front of them, because you know that's not your answer. And then you're going to ask certain people questions, and obviously they see your cards, so you can use the information they give to work out what's in front of you. And that's the gist of it. Very simple, very streamlined, but just pure deduction, and it just works really well. So that's 13 Clues at number 9. At number 8, I have Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Now, this isn't a pure deduction game. It's what you call like a murder mystery style game, where you're trying to solve who the murderer is by working out who it isn't, basically. And this one is very cool. I think it's a game that dates back from the 80s, where you have a kind of index of different addresses, and you have like this kind of a case book, and you're basically going around London talking to different people, finding out what they know about this certain case, and it's just very dynamic, very interesting, engaging, a nice story kind of narrative to it. And yeah, as I said, if you like that kind of, the art of deduction, the whole Sherlock Holmes mythos, then this is one you'll probably enjoy. A nice pastime. It's really relaxing, and it's cooperative, so you can play it with your loved ones without that competitive edge. So that's Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective at number 8. At number 7, I have another narrative style game, but this one is in the modern era. This is Chronicles of Crime. Very much similar to Sherlock Holmes in the way it plays, the narrative, trying to solve murder mysteries and stuff like that. But this one, I think it has a better kind of visual appeal, because you get a bunch of these cards and they all have QR codes on them, and then you are basically scanning these QR codes to talk to different people and interrogate them about evidence. You can got this kind of VR method into the game, where you can scan the crime scenes and pick up evidence and analyze them and send them off to forensics and stuff like that. So again, if you like deducing who you think the murderer is and why, then this is one to check out. So much fun. Chronicles of Crime. Number 6, back to pretty much your standard deduction now, with Letters from Whitechapel. Now this is a 1 versus all style game, where one person takes the role as Jack the Ripper, everybody else are police officers, and you have this huge map of London, all with different numbered spots on them, and then the person who's playing Jack the Ripper is secretly moving from a murder scene in order to get back to his secret base. And because you know how many spaces Jack the Ripper is moving each time, you can kind of deduce the different routes he can take, eliminate certain routes he can take and stuff like that in order to pinpoint where he is. And if you arrest him on the spot, then you are the winner. But obviously if Jack lasts a certain amount of rounds, then he's going to win. A very tense game. It can be very brain burnery and very frustrating as you, as Jack kind of manipulates you and, leads you in the wrong directions and down the wrong pathways and maybe goes back on himself and stuff like that. But when you do catch Jack, it's very rewarding and it's a lot of fun. And again, gorgeous production of this one, and it looks really nice and pretty streamlined and pure in terms of its game mechanisms as well. That is Letters from Whitechapel at number 6. At number 5, I have Alchemists. Now, Alchemists is without doubt the heaviest game on this list, and deduction is not only the only method in the game, it's also a worker placement game, but the deduction is pretty much the dominant part of the game, I would say, as you are trying to determine basically the ingredients or I don't know how to explain it, almost the method of how these different symbols are coming together to get these different ingredients. It's this very complex brain burnery mechanism where you've got to kind of cross-reference different ingredients with their symbology and work out which ingredient relates to which symbol. App integration on this one as well, which is scanning these different ingredients and getting combinations, and you can work out which is which. Also has this cool kind of pushy luck mechanism where sometimes if you don't know the exact answer, you can kind of take a wild guess and publicize your theory, but somebody else can prove it wrong later. A lot going on in this one, probably a bit more convoluted than I'd like it to be, but the deduction is very strong. And if you do like your heavier end deduction games, this is one to at least check out because you will enjoy that portion of the game. That is Alchemists. At number 4, I have Letter Jam. Now this is a fairly recent release. It's another cooperative game, so you're working together. And it uses that system where you know everybody else's letter in front of them, but you don't know your own. And then you're formulating words using the letters in order to help people work out what the letters are, to ultimately work out, and when you work out each of your letters, you're going to formulate a word at the end, which if you get right, is going to score you more points. A very nice pastime activity, this one. The word game with the deduction works really well together. A nice new fresh concept, and this one's been received pretty well. And I'd highly recommend checking this one out if you like your kind of lighter family orientated games. You like crafting words and stuff like that. This one is just a really cool approach on it. That's Letter Jam at number 4. At number 3, I have a strictly 2-player game with Fugitive. Now this is by Tim Fowers, who makes some really cool games. This one is basically one person's the fugitive, one plays the marshal. The fugitive is basically playing cards from his hand, and they're all numbered. He's playing them face down, and he's trying to get from number 1, I think it's all the way up to number, I think it might be 50 or something like that. And he can only go 3 steps at a time. But there are different ways he can do things. And then the marshal is trying to work out which cards or which different steps that the fugitive has played. And he can do that because every time he's drawing cards from this deck and he's working out which ones he's not being used, obviously he knows only a certain number of steps have been taken each turn. And sometimes you can just trap the fugitive so he can't move. But yeah, a really cool one. It has a nice back and forth feel to it, very tense, and it's just very streamlined. Nice little production, good artwork, and just a nice little kind of a 20-minute game. This one really does give you that fix of deduction very nicely. That is Fugitive. At number 2, I have Cryptid. Cryptid is such a cool game where every player involved has a unique rule which applies to them. And then using that unique rule combined with everybody else's unique rule is going to kind of pinpoint an exact location on this map. And you've got to basically work out what other people's clues are by asking them questions, by saying, could the cryptid be on this spot here? And they can either give you an answer that says yes or no. Depending on what they do, you also have to give an answer relating to that as well. And you can really kind of mislead people by the clues you give. You can cleverly play the game, and the clues are also really interesting. So it might be, I don't know, it could be on a water terrain or a sand terrain, or it could be within 3 spaces of a certain kind of monument, or it could be within 2 spaces of a certain type of monster or an animal. There's just loads of different kind of clues relating to the terrain, to the artifacts, to the different things like that. And the way they all mesh together is so clever. The replayability is pretty much infinite on this one, because just the combinations and the kind of algorithm is so genius. And if you like your streamlined, very pure deduction games, this is one to check out. So just working out what the other people's clues are is interesting. And again, ultimately, when you do get that final spot and work out everyone's clues, it's so rewarding. And again, plays in a good amount of time frame as well, because it takes about 30-40 minutes to play, sometimes even quicker than that, which feels just about right. And it's just very enjoyable. That is Cryptid. And finally, at number 1, I have Awkward Guests. Now, to be honest, this one is head and shoulders above the rest, and that's no detriment to the other games, because I really enjoy them all. But this one is fantastic. If you like your games like Cluedo, but you hate the roll and move, you hate the kind of stagnantness of it, this one is so interesting, it's so dynamic and really just engaging, because it's your standard kind of murder mystery where you're trying to work out who the murderer is, what the weapon he's used is, almost if he's got an accomplice or not, and why he's done it as well. And you're going to do that by the very clever card system, where every round you're going to draw X amount of cards, and they're going to give you kind of information by saying, I don't know, maybe this motive wasn't the case, or all these kind of different weapons weren't being used. But you've also got this kind of blueprint of the mansion as well, where you can kind of cross off different routes where the kind of house staff are telling you where they have or haven't seen people. And that's going to just lock off sections of the mansion where you know all the weapons accessible from there haven't been used. And it's just the kind of the way everything comes together, and the deduction is just so raw. It's so much fun, and as I said, you can just lose yourself in it, as you can just, you know, the story just kind of comes together and different puzzle pieces just formulate to work out who the murderer is. Obviously, it's kind of the first person to guess it is going to be the winner. So there's that tension where you can't be too kind of thorough about getting your kind of verdict completely right, because someone might jump in there before you because they might have better information. It also has this very clever kind of back and forth trading mechanism where you can give up information in order to receive information, but you can cleverly hide cards that you think are particularly pertinent from your opponents, so that you kind of benefit more than they do. A very clever game. I think you can't really buy it at retail, at least yet. I'm hoping sometime down the line it will, but this was a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and everybody I know who's played it just absolutely adores this one. It is brilliant, absolutely genius, and again, replayability wise, infinite, because of that deck system. There is just an infinite combination of different cards that mesh together to give different verdicts and different stories every time you play. So couldn't recommend this one highly enough. That's Awkward Guests. So I hope you've enjoyed this this quick top 10. If you like your deduction games, definitely check out some of these. I'm sure you've probably heard of some of them, but maybe there's something you haven't. If you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.